Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do try to stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and it's also uploaded as a YouTube video under the channel of Zenitsu in case you missed that, while also being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. Please feel free to do the social media doobly-doo thing and leave that rating, like, follow, subscribe, review, whatever, depending on the platform that you're listening on. It really does help support the podcast. So today I am back with Jay Stewart, and we are coming up to the weekend where we're actually going to be getting the ban and restriction list. But that same exact weekend, we also are going to be getting Worlds. So Worlds is not going to be following the ban and restriction list. World is going to be playing the 2.5 format, borderline unrestricted. So it'll be interesting to see what tops, and I guess that's just going to be the greater theme of this episode. So the question of the week, which will spur off into the greater conversation, is what deck do you expect to see not only at Worlds, but potentially win Worlds? So, Jay Stewart,
Yeah,
feel free to take this one away.
yeah. So some of the decks I kind of expect to see is, of course, the new Imperial stuff, because we already are seeing how level 6 floodgates are really good, and I think even over in JP, it's like really good too. There's also the potential for Royal Knights even being present too. I think some people in my locals were kind of excited to play Royal Knights again too, with the new stuff. Um, I know one of our local players. He goes like Nats almost every year and everything, and he's like always constantly topping at big events and everything. He's theory crafting with a Tau loop and everything, so there's potential for that. I still think the purple hybrid still has some really good potential of being present, because if it just pops off, it pops off, and it doesn't need to always just win the game. It can always just try to mill out the opponent. Um, Imperial's like one of the other decks I kind of see also being good, present, because I mean it's blue green, it's got the partition, it's got a lot of good stuff going for it. Um, and whether it be the Imperial Dramon line, or it could even just be the armor variant that runs as a Magnamon X as its top end, that could even be another thing. I think even Blue Mirage, like if it's not the Honkook version, because we've seen how Mirage Gallimon has kind of been present. So if it was just probably the either Galaxy Loop maybe variant, or even could just be the just pure Mirage, I think that would be also really good in Worlds as well, or something we could see. As far as winning, I I'm going to lean in on Purple Hybrid.
Yeah, I mean, Purple Hybrid is just one of those decks that just does a lot, and like there's not really a whole lot of counterplay to it, which is why a lot of people are looking at it. As far as like your overall analysis on like some of the top decks, I think out of all that you listed, honestly, I think Talmaloop is probably the weakest one, especially for needing to be hyper consistent. The deck is good. It was good over in Japan because it was best of ones, so it needed to win a lot less and be a lot less consistent. But I think like based on where the format is, it can it can have some struggles with consistency. I'm not trying to put down the deck at all. I think it's incredibly strong, but I think it does have consistency issues. But as we've seen with like the old blue green Imperial, they're slowly getting around that and fixing it. So maybe somebody will figure out something to make the deck even better for Worlds. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot that I don't disagree with. I think my addition to that list is Fen. Fenry Lugamon is still like an incredibly strong OTK deck. Um, and if Purple Hybrids is in there, then Fen might have a higher chance of doing better, because not only did the deck get better because of the new tools that it's working with, but it's not really like super great into Purple Hybrids because they have like security bombs that Fen sometimes can't really play around. but it's more of the fact that purple hybrids enables Fen to be more consistent by putting pieces it would potentially want or need into the trash. And the duo tamer being two colors also makes it so that yes, it could get milled out faster, but that means it could see more stuff in its trash faster. Then they have the retriever Lugamon to pull stuff out of the trash if they're playing more of a pure build rather than like the SOC with the Doru stuff. So I think like that as a result has a lot going for it. I don't exactly know if Galaxy Loop is gonna be like Galaxy Loop is obviously gonna be a strong deck, but it'll be interesting to see what top end people are playing with because there's a lot more level 6 floodgates that the deck is leveraging. We're seeing innovations with the Hina Dragon stuff. We're seeing obviously Dinomon and Medieval Gallant. So like there's more good red stuff. There's obviously Gallantmon X antibody, and like I guess by extension, you also would most likely see a Gallantmon deck because that deck also looks pretty decent. It hasn't been putting up that great of results in Japan, but it's still one, two, three, four, five, six, like their sixth best deck. Um, and yeah, like I think the only things that you didn't really hit on, you covered armor. Armor is still going to be good. Um, I think maybe one of the newer decks from 2.5 might be able to do well. I don't know if it's going to be Jesmon or if it's going to be Chronicles, but I think both of them have some pretty good potential. I don't know if like Gigacetramon's really gonna do well. It's doing okay in Japan, not like crazy by any standards, but and I really haven't checked up on the English side of things like our meta because we haven't really had any events for this environment. So it's gonna be really awkward to like see where North American players are at or just players from other regions because we really don't have data for this outside of the little bit that Japan has because they had 2.0 a little bit longer than us.
Yeah, because originally I do have Chronicles on here. I have Examon on here as well, but I didn't really mention them because I just wasn't too sure of their power level, so to say. Because I mean, with the Chronicles deck, it just like if your opponent gets rid of one body on the field, you're able to get out another one, but it's not really like protection or floodgating like Imperial or what Armor was doing. So that's why I was a little hesitant. Versus like Examon, there is like tools to really try to control your opponent's board, whether it be using the old EX3 and then Examon, and then your opponent declares attack with like say the rookie they just raised and everything. Then you're able to counter time and go into that Examon Ace. That could really do some really crazy shenanigans theoretically, but it's just theoretically because I know Japan, it's Examon hasn't seen results at all.
Yeah, Examon's one of those. He's got a lot going for him, but I don't think he's got it in him to go the distance. Like I would sooner put my money on like Bloomlord than Examon. No offense, but like I think Bloomlord because he's still like an incredibly strong and efficient deck that only has gotten more generic green tools to work with. So like I've seen a lot of people just cut the Bloomlord, just run the plant engine, and then go into Leopardmon, and then use Leopardmon to play Medieval Gallant, and then hope Medieval Gallant just floodgates the opponent out of the game. Um, I think Birds is still pretty strong, like Red Birds. What else do I think is like actually like I guess a sleeper hit. I think Cross is dead in the water. Just because Medieval Gallantmon says this is not a real deck. So unfortunately, it just sucks to be a cross player. Um, I don't think Excel is good enough. I think Leviamon can still do well. Um, like there's still just a lot of really strong decks. Whether that's actually a good thing or a bad thing, that's to be determined. I might just give up on this script that I've been writing. I'm just having a hard time putting the video together. Like I have all of the stuff there, in terms of like what I'm trying to say, and maybe this could like lead into a sub conversation where honest decks. Like that might be interesting. What defines honesty and all that stuff. Like I'm still trying to work on. I'm struggling with the video, I guess. Because it's one of the more deeper ones, and I'm trying to make it more digestible. But that's just a content creator thing. Um, I think Red Hybrids also still is really good, just because OTK decks are OTK decks. There's not outside of Dynamon, there's not really much of anything that's trying to stop them. Um, yeah, I don't. Outside of those, I really don't. Oh, Three Gray Angels. That's something we can't really sleep on at times. Three Gray Angels could just surprise people. Like it's one of those
That
like
again.
toxic control decks where if it sets up its lock, it's really hard to get out of.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know if because one other deck I didn't mention was uh the seven great the seven demon lords deck. I didn't know if that would even be a contender really, because now that the fact that we have the Royal Knights is like, would people who were playing the seven greats, would they be switching more to the Royal Knights? Is kind of what I was thinking.
Oh no, one
And
hundred percent. Like it's not that Seven Great Demon Lords is bad. It's just Royal Knights does the same thing but better now. Like they keep one upping each other to like borderline unhealthy levels, and I've kind of already said this before. I'll say it again. When those types of decks become a power floor, it really puts a lot of stress and strain on the game because every other deck has to keep up with that deck. And there's not a lot that actually could keep up with that. At least based on Japanese data, literally the only thing that competes with Royal Knights is various other OTK based decks because they just don't give a crap. They just kill the opponent. Which Virus Imperial is one of the better ones. And then there's Purple Hybrids, which yeah, like purple hybrids. Why bother interacting with your opponent when you could just kill yourself, deal some chip damage, delete their Digimon, and then reset without the opponent really having any ability to interact? I mean, granted, Royal Knights have ace Digimon, but like a good purple hybrids player would obviously play around aces. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see like what actually tops and what people are thinking about bringing, because this is the world stage. We are all caught up for the most part. I don't know if there's like a promo or two that we're missing. We might not be. We might actually be caught up at this point, but it definitely will be interesting to see where this event goes. Because I'm trying to remember how many players are even in this. Because I know like
I
Worlds.
think it's like I
Go
think
ahead.
it's like two from each region. Like, so JP would have like two people. North America, we have two. I think Europe has two. Latin America, I think, has two. Like, so on and so forth. I think it's like 12, if not 16 players, maybe go to it.
Yeah, I could. Depending on like how I don't exactly remember how Japan does theirs because I know China should have representatives as well. Um, and then yeah, so two from China, two from Japan, two from North America, so that's already six. Then we got Europe, eight, Australia, 10, Latin America, 12. So maybe there is like 12 to 16 people. That would be that's I mean it's basically a super locals. It's always been that way. But I think this is definitely would be one of the larger world events.
Yeah, I know it's not like crazy crowded for Worlds or anything like that, but I mean, because they're trying to do like the match, because it's like kind of like because it is best of three, and the fact that over it, since it's held in Japan, like they're trying to get the people in and out of there kind of thing, because they have the room for a limited time or something like that, or maybe they use that room for other TCGs, so like they don't have like crazy big crowd for the Digimon Nationals, so to say,
Yeah,
or regionals.
and I know
Sorry.
Bandai is
Uh,
also going to be doing like other worlds at the same time. So like I know One Piece Day just happened. And then the big announcement at One Piece Day is One Piece is copying Digimon and trying to be unified by 2026. So that's going to be a whole thing. I mean, it makes sense. Like they're unifying all of their games around like the world. Uh, Dragon Ball's unified. Digimon at this point is going to be unified. Gundam is launching unified. Union Arena can't be unified because licensing is a complete and utter bitch. But they're trying. They'll try. Um, and then Battle Spirits is dead, but that was never unified. Uh, what else do I have? Dragon Ball Masters is not unified because the game doesn't exist in Japan. So yeah, it just makes sense for their biggest game to be taking notes from all of the other games and them being unified. But I know that's happening similar, like around the similar time as the Digimon stuff. So I don't know how much attention they're actually going to be putting on Digimon. I hope they stream, like they have every single round streamed, not like every single player, but like, hey, this is going to be a 3 to 4 round event. We're going to have 3 to 4 rounds streamed. Like, I think that would be really, really nice.
Well, if I remember correctly, I think what they do is they kind of do like a round robin kind of tournament, and then they go, all right, here's the top four players. You guys will be playing now, kind of thing. I think that's how it is, but I could be completely wrong on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I've never competed at Worlds. The farthest I ever got was Nationals, um, repeatedly. So I'm just not that good enough for Worlds. But it, I don't know. They could very easily do some like alternative goofy formatting for tournament structure because it is a very special tournament. Um, yeah, but I just hope that the event is streamed because you know that's players want to see like the game actually played at a high competitive level, and let's hope there's as little gameplay errors as possible. I know East kind of mentioned that like, oh, Japanese players are really sick of like being told that their plays were bad or whatever. Which I 100% get. I see it even on my own gameplay videos, like people calling out my misplays. Um, I personally don't mind it because that's how I improve, but like, I get it. It's higher pressure at a bigger event versus me sitting on my computer just dicking around.
Well, it's not even that. It's like because like there was like I've been to like a couple of regionals, and like I've realized after the fact that I've made misplays, but it was like at the moment I didn't see it because it's a it's like one thing when you could say, hey, I made a misplay after the fact versus when you're in the tournament. Like you got a completely different mindset. You're kind of like, you have after the thing, you have time to have like a calm, a relaxation kind of chance to breathe, to realize what your gameplay was, what your mistakes were, and everything.
I mean,
Like during the
the funny
heat
thing
of the
is, it should all be in post. So it's just like, okay, yeah, you pointed out my misplay like way after the fact. Like, sure, I might be a little bit embarrassed, but like it's all in post. Like, I don't know. It could just be like a completely different mindset that a North American player would have versus a Japanese player. I don't know. Cultural differences is definitely a thing. I know
yeah
like
that
Japan is huge on respect, like privacy, respect, all that jazz,
honor.
honor. Yeah. So like it makes sense that they would have a little bit more of an issue versus us. Cuz like we're not necessarily trying to be malicious about pointing out people's errors or misplays. We just want the most accurate gameplay that we could, I guess. Accurate representation of the gameplay in the current board state. Like we just want to see the most optimal plays possible. And it really sucks when somebody like at finals just completely punts it. And I get the pressure is real. Like it is legitimately real. I've, believe me, gone out of tournaments like hands shaking because of the high pressure situations that it can do to you. But so it's easier said than done. But yeah, no, there's just a lot of cultural differences, and I think like as long as we're maybe more respectful about it when we do it, if we're continuing to do it, that might be a helpful thing.
Yeah,
But
because
yeah,
it's
I
not
just
even.
oh go ahead.
It could also just be how the person interprets it too. Because like you could write like, "Hey, you misplayed," and like you could just type, "Hey, you misplayed," and you might mean one thing, but how the receiver receives it, they can interpret it as a completely different thing too.
True. Text communication only goes so far in terms of like intent because you obviously can't hear the vocal inflections behind it because hey you misplayed versus hey you misplayed uh two completely different tones but on text it's all the same which is why sometimes I hate text communication but it's a necessary evil. But yeah, so like I think Worlds definitely is going to be really interesting, especially since they're going to what day? We're getting the ban restriction list on the 16th, right? That's Sunday.
Yes, the 16th.
I believe that's the same day as Worlds. So probably after Worlds or right during Worlds is when they're gonna announce the ban and restriction. So whatever I think like they already needed to have submitted their deck list. So like Bandai already knows what people are playing, or I think that they should know what people are playing. Um, Maybe they don't as of right now. I don't know. Again, never made it to Worlds. Can't really say. But it'll be like it'll be interesting seeing how this is one of the few events for 2.5 on a larger scale. It's not really a large. It's a more grandiose scale. It's not larger. It's 16 people at most. At least I think it is based on my math. Um so it's not like it's a larger event, it's a more grandiose event. But more data is more data in my perspective and it'll be interesting to see what people are going to be bringing because some people like Donkey Nog, he's probably just still going to be playing purple hybrids. I don't think he has any reason not to play purple hybrids. Or no, was he he wasn't on purple hybrids. He was on Levia because it was basically the same finals. Yeah, so he might still be on Levia. He might swap off. I don't know. Um, because Levia didn't really get worse. It's just people are playing other things.
Yeah, and some of the decks actually kind of lean into Leviamon's favor and everything too. Like if they play out like Duskmon like plays out Inheritable a Tamer, oh that could trigger Levia X in the trash and everything. The Imperial Dramon virus deck, if it plays out another body on the field to do its DNA shenanigans, that could trigger Leviamon in itself right there. Like there's a few decks that Leviamon has a leaning favor into that kind of work out for it. So it's not like it's impossible. I mean, the Cerberus package is even just still really good.
Yeah, and I think like anyone who was playing Demon Lords is most likely playing Royal Knights. That just seems like the natural transition because they're literally the same deck. Well, not literally the same deck. Figuratively the same deck. They're just this big dumb.
Same game mechanic.
Yeah, they're just this big dumb. I'm gonna reduce the cost of my megas. Hard play a mega. My mega goes away. Ooh. And then just out of nowhere, play a card that just has a all basically alternate win condition where you should reasonably win the game the second it's played. Um, Except I think like the biggest difference is the fact that Royal Knights does the whole game plan better and faster now, especially since it has aces to be able to leverage more potential. Yeah, like
Just
it's crazy. I honestly think like from all of the decks that we've talked about, as far as what I think is going to win Worlds, it's probably most likely going to be either Royal Knights or Purple Hybrids. I see those two decks more specifically compared to every other deck, um, like really standing the best chances. I think like Virus Imperial could get there, but the price of Virus Imperial, like if somebody just wanted to build Virus Imperial now and they didn't already have the cards because they didn't think the deck was going to be that good, um, like they're probably priced out. Either that or they're just forced to spend the $100 per Shadramon and cry about it when it gets banned. I don't think it's actually going to get banned, but I think the Wormmon does way more egregious things to enable the reset than the Shadramon. Granted, the Shadramon is kind of dumb too. Like, they're both stupid, but
Just out of curiosity, does overflow technically trigger when, like, let's say if I had Dynasmon Ace on the field and everything, and King Drazel, whatever, in the breeding area triggers to tuck him under, does that overflow trigger or no?
no, it doesn't. Because it
Oh,
technically
then
has
yeah.
not left the field. Like, that's so it's the same ruling as if it goes underneath a tamer. It's still on the field. Like, it's really weird and goofy. But yeah, that was the thing with BT17 Omnimon Ace, where it's just like, yeah, King Draze will just tuck it underneath. No overflow trigger, which makes it incredibly powerful to use any Ace Royal Knights cards. So like Jesmon GX is good, Alpha Oryukin is good, especially since they already have a naturally lower play cost compared to the others. So like you're basically just hard playing Ace Digimon half the time, and the other half you're just playing like the best of Royal Knights when it comes to their on play effects. So like maybe um, like Virus Imperial, just because I think isn't the level 6 floodgating on play effects? I don't remember exactly what he does because I'm not building the
I
deck.
got the card beside me. Hold on. Give me one sec here. Virus Imperial, according to his text. Yep,
Um
different pile. Different pile. Hold on.
yeah. When digivolving, your opponent can't play Digimon or Tamers by effects until the end of the turn. Then, if Dragon Mode is in this Digivolution source, trash the top card of the opponent's security. All turns, when this Digimon, or when your opponent's security stack is removed, delete one of the opponent's Digimon with DP equal to or less than this. Not terrible. Very
I
much
mean
not
it.
bad.
I mean it definitely stops Omnimon from BT13. That's Secret because it's his effect is when he's played, you could delete a Draysol to play all Royal Knights from under. So
I
technically
think
speaking,
I think because of turn player priority, it outs the Imperial like pseudo floodgate effect. So like, but I think like the fact that like red and purple and blue have some of the best floodgates really puts them at a bigger advantage against Royal Knights. So like that's kind of why I think that like those colored decks are going to do incredibly well because everyone's probably already anticipating somebody's going to be playing Royal Knights. Like they'd be kind of dumb not to. I want to say like Royal Knights just seems above and beyond like one of the better decks currently, which again I think is kind of problematic, but that's not for me to decide. That's for Bandai to see if they're going to do anything about it, which I highly doubt that they will. Um, just like how purple hybrids, like there's only one card in the entire deck that is actually ban slash restriction worthy. I mean, granted, there's other good cards in there that are most likely going to get banned and restricted instead of the one card that actually enables the degeneracy. But again, we won't know until the 16th, which is Worlds. So it'll be interesting to see the spread. Because Bandai loves having data to act on. So I don't know if they already like that's why I'm curious if they already submitted their deck lists. So Bandai could see, okay, if the world's best players are playing these things something here might be a problem. So like let's just say half the players are playing purple hybrids. They have to look at that and say, okay, maybe purple hybrids might be a little problematic.
yeah, because what was it last year? They were because last year what was it? It was like a Leviamon versus. I felt like there was like a mirror match or something.
Yeah, there was a lot of Leviamons last Worlds, because I think it was like I know Sekon made it into Worlds, and I believe Sekon won Worlds. So like maybe
Yeah,
somebody's gonna innovate on security control or some like heavy super control deck. And I think like Taloop kind of is in like it's taking up that slot essentially. Like Like that's kind of why I feel like Security Control kind of fell by the wayside, is because like we have decks that are comparable in gameplay to what it's doing, that actually are actively trying to win the game so they can, not lose to ties or wish to tie every single time. So I think like right now the Royal Knights, the Demon Lords, those the Tau Loops, those are the decks that are occupying more of like the control players, like tickling their fancy.
Hmm. Yeah, and as far as like OTK wise, I feel like it definitely is kind of like into the high. I mean, I don't know if OTK would be considered for purple hybrid, so to say, but I mean, to me, at times it can feel like being OTK.
It can
Um,
do a lot with a lot of memory. It just needs more specific setup. It's a better deck as like a chip deck because it uses the same three cards forever. Like there's it just yep, let's use Matt, Duskmon, Velgermon, and then loop those cards at nauseum, and then if they literally can't do anything about the pressure, then they just fold to it. But I think like that's where like the meta dynamic is gonna shift around. That's kind of why I say like the two big boogeyman decks is obviously going to be purple hybrids and Royal Knights. And I think like that meta is going to be completely and utterly warped around those two decks more than any other deck. Like Mirage is pretty much dead in Japan. Like even Galaxy Loop isn't, or Galaxy Engine isn't really playing Mirage as a top end. It's still there sometimes. They just are exploring different things because the engine is so broken they can. Um but yeah, I
yeah, I
think
think
oh go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think another thing that would also kind of be the deciding factor is also just because I know JP, like, they are best of ones. Everyone knows this and everything. But at Nat or at Worlds, it is a best of three. And I know because of that, they weren't used to like the whole SecCon deck. They're aware of what SecCon was, but they didn't have to ever worry about it before. And it's like there no other time at Worlds, any of the previous times, SecCon made it. And when the fact that the player showed up with SecCon, and it's like, oh yeah, we're a best of three, so I literally have to just beat you once, install you the second game, and win, kind of thing. And it just like
Well,
kind of throws
so
it.
Japan was, I talked to East about it during my like episode with him, and he said like because of the cultural differences, Japan tends to not play these slower control decks because Japan as a country is more fast paced. They're like, let me get my game in, let me get out. I had my fun, but I don't want it to be my entire day. Um, so like they just were completely unprepared. Like, yes, they were aware of security control, but they were unprepared because not many players actually play it. So they didn't have any practice against how it's played, especially with any iteration to the deck changing your overall approach to it. Because my advice from like 4 years ago on how to beat security control is completely different than what I would say for it now. Not saying like, oh, they haven't played security control since then, but I'm just saying like the deck has gone through changes and they just were not prepared for it, and that really caught them off guard. Best of ones or best of threes, like completely put aside, they just it was just a matchup they had very little experience on, and it showed that year. Peter deserved to win because he basically caught everyone with their pants down, and yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what like what Donkey Nog brings and what some of the other big big names bring.
Yeah, for sure.
And I wonder like in the audience how many Ban Mirage signs are going to be flying up.
Oh yeah, because I'm pretty sure they do stream like at least the last two rounds for Digimon and everything.
They'll at
So
least stream the finals, yeah. Like that's going to be a given. It's just I hope they stream like however long the tournament is. I want to see something from each round. And then they're probably most likely going to pull a One Piece style thing where they're going to have the breakdown and then probably the ban and restriction list when the event is over. That's where I see them posting it outside of social media.
Right.
Because they could very easily just post it beforehand and then we all get to discuss it and then see Worlds not follow the ban and restriction list and see how broken things are. And it's just like, oh yeah, now these make sense. Even though we probably were only begging for like the same 20 cards for the past year.
Yeah, because I feel like the cards that we were asking for last year, I'm pretty confident to say that they're still being asked for to this day.
Yeah, and like I know we kind of already touched this before on our ban and restriction like episode for this up and coming ban and restriction list, but like I was talking about it with some dudes at locals and honestly like we really need to get cards like actually banned. So like the scrambles put more pressure on getting cards like hardcore banned rather than limited because now every deck has a tiny hint of grave recursion and purple's already abusing the fact that they have the best grave recursion. So it's just like one of cards are, yes, you'll see them less frequently, but the fact that it's no longer a one-time use thing is where things start to become a problem, where it's just like, oh yeah, ban ruin mode to 1 to stop Tau Loop. Well, cool. I'll just use Scramble. Grab the same ruin mode out of my trash over and over again. Like, they really just need to start banning cards because of like the changes in design that allow us to use the trash more proactively. So I think like this ban and restriction list is going to be a very telling sign on the direction. Like if they're not going to announce the next one in like, oh, the next one's going to be in 3 months or 6 months. Like if they're not going to announce when they're going to do it again, like they're going to have to hit a lot of cards as we've kind of already alluded to.
Well, and the other thing too is like we said before at last week episode too was like it could easily once we're unified, we could actually see more banner restriction lists happening more often because before it's like JP was always they were always afraid of hitting cards because we were always in different formats between JP and us, and they didn't want to affect future sales, so to say, to a certain degree. So like now that we're unified, it's like there's no reason not to have banner restriction lists more often when needed.
Yeah, like I said, they just need to take the page from Dragon Ball Super Masters and have it every single like BT release. Like, hey, new BT set, here's the new ban and restriction list because uh like I guess we could kind of transition into one of the videos that I'm having a trouble writing is honesty. Like what defines an honest Digimon deck? And all I could firmly say every single one of the top Digimon decks, they are dishonest AF. Like they are not honest decks at all. Um and like I think I was correlating honesty with power creep to where the more dishonest you like the deck is, the more telling of power creep it has. So it's almost like telling on itself. It's just like, oh, what defines an honest or dishonest deck? If it's a dishonest deck, it's obviously doing something overtly broken to make it feel dishonest. And that dishonesty um is this big sign of power creep. Like, hey, I'm dishonest because this aspect is power creep.
Yeah, no, because I'm trying to think, because I think like right around BT 5 when I joined up and everything, I think we were dealing at the time at my locals. I was trying to trying to figure out how to play against a rookie rush deck, but also just because of the fact that it was like so cheap and it was constantly like my opponent would always constantly send me to one, so it was like always slow me down a lot more than I needed. And because they would always send me a one, and keep in mind, it's like if I played memory setters like, oh, I'll play this memory setter and hopefully they don't choke me again. It's like, well, I put my opponent at 3. They're like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and raise, do 2 checks. I'm going to trigger this and like suspend something of mine that was a blocker. Like just do a bunch of stuff based off the memory that I had to give them, kind of thing.
Well, so like what I mean by honest and dishonest, like Rookie Rush, I can say like even back in BT5, that was an honest deck. Like that was honest Digimon. There was nothing about the deck that was overtly broken, game warping, or like feels bad. So I'm just gonna pull up my script that I've been working on, and I could kind of answer some questions based on that, or kind of give some examples based on it. So what I correlated honesty to is two big factors: one, consistency, and two, disproportional risk and reward ratio. So, what I mean by consistency is not necessarily the consistency in the deck's like ability to find its cards. That's part of it. What I mean by consistency is actually pressure, where how much pressure does the deck exert to make it so X player is making it difficult for Y player to be able to respond. So the base example that I gave for that is like Takami Kazuchi. I picked a lot in my script on Takami Kazuchi because it's the best example of the one of the more unfair decks, where it's just like, yeah, so me playing out Ukomon is applying pressure because it gets me closer to my win con faster. So that's a good example of the pressure, and there's a disproportionate risk and reward where I have zero risk using that card versus the in-engine searcher and hard playing it. Like it is just better to Ukomon rather than hard play the deck's native searcher. So the risk reward ratio is also disproportionate because I could chip with Uko and I'm actually more beneficial for chipping with Uko. So like that's just a base level example of like the disproportion um and the pressure that decks can exert. Because like if I'm sitting here on Mirage and I'm just playing memory boost, training, memory boost, training, what response do you have as a Digimon player to that type of gameplay?
So the only gameplay you would have against that is try to play out your floodgates and everything to prevent your opponent from trying to use those. But one of the problems I feel like it is with Mirage is there's so many easy ways for you to bounce the floodgates to where it kind of just makes it irrelevant at that point.
Yes, and the other big thing about pressure is even though those cards themselves aren't exerting pressure, it's the potential that they have for them existing. So like that's kind of like the stuff I'm trying to like write in this script around and try to solidify better. Maybe I just need a rubber ducky. Maybe that would help me with actually reading and finishing writing the script. But the other thing that I was mentioning was like the disproportional risk versus reward ratio, and I think like another really good example of that is what did I write? So one of the examples that I wrote was Medieval Gallantmon, where again, similarly to Ukomon, it's a hyper generic card where the risk for running that card in your deck, even if it's completely off color, completely off brand, or whatever, is so significantly low versus the high output that it could potentially have to just steal and win games basically solo. Um, so some other examples that I gave was um, inconsistent pressure. So inconsistent pressure was the idea of a deck being able to basically do something that a normal deck wouldn't be able to do. So hybrid decks, cross decks, and the clock decks like Royal Knights are all very good because imagine the situation where you have nothing in raising or can't use anything in raising and you just have a single tamer on the field. as a normal Digimon deck, what do you do in those situations?
Like, because like I know like there's times where it's like playing against 7th grade demon lords, and it's like, oh, they got so many bodies. It's like I have to answer this because yeah, they might not have it in their hand right now, but it's just the potential of them having the uh whatever that boss that they have, the Ogomon or
Ogudamon?
yeah, Agudamon. It's like just the threat alone of them even having it right then and there is just way too big for me to not try to respond to or try to prepare for it in some shape, way, or form.
Well, kind of what I was getting at least like in the script, was in the situation where you literally just have a single tamer on your field. Hybrid decks can use that tamer to then digivolve onto, have a Digimon to be able to progress their gameplay even when they don't have access at their main, like at Digimon's main core safety area, which was the raising area. Um, Clock decks like Royal Knights, they just have their egg stack built, and it's reducing their Digimon's play cost by a bajillion and a half. So they're just gonna hard slam level 6 Digimon. Cross decks also same type of thing. If there's any materials underneath the tamer, they just tap the tamer and then boom. Here's a high level Digimon that's gonna out a lot of situations for essentially cheap or like next to nothing. So like that's an example of like inconsistent pressure where this tamer, this singular card on the field for so many different decks can do way more than what it reasonably should based on like the normal base design of the game, which like again using Mirage as an example, it's just like Mirage with nothing in raising is zero. There's zero threat to have with a singular tamer on the field. What my best answer is just try to reset, which that does apply its own level of pressure, but it's not the same pressure in proportion to the decks that can do basically everything off of nothing. And like there's a lot more in depth when it comes to this inconsistent pressure and the consistency idea and the difference in risk and reward. Like the whole thing is like basically a subjective script is what I was writing and trying to get at. But like when I was writing this, I came to the conclusion that like, oh, based on this type of thing and like what I'm trying to, the message I'm trying to get off, like this is kind of the tells of power creep, is like, oh, this is what makes like it's basically more self discovery on why I haven't been having as much fun with Digimon, is because I liked fair decks. I didn't like unfair decks. And I beat somebody at locals this weekend, or this past weekend. They were playing heavy metal, and like this is kind of where I really wanted to double down on the script and write it, because he's just like, heavy metal is unplayable because it's too honest. And I'm just like, yeah, I could see that. Honest decks are not good enough. And I felt that way in BT 17 when I was playing the nerfed version of Ancient Garurumon. Like, Ancient Garurumon in BT 17, granted with the nerfs, was too fair of a deck to be played. It just was.
I mean, you can even say that about a lot of the Liberator decks from EX7 because, yeah, there's like two cards, Hexablau and Shoto, that were like really getting abused, but like literally every other deck, like Dragon Links, the Heavy Metal at the time, the Syndrel, the Vortex deck, like there was and Three Musketeers, like the manga, they look really good decks, but that's because in the manga, it's not they're not playing like competitive. It's like like seeing Jaden Yugi's deck from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. You see it in the anime, you go, oh wow, it's so cool. I want to play this. I want to play one of each hero. I want to play one of each fusion just like him. And when you do that, you realize, oh, it's not good at all.
Well, even like because Liberators, like the decks for the most part are like they're actually really good decks. I'm not discrediting them. I think the designs behind all of the Liberator decks, outside of like maybe one or two of them, have been very good designs. Like they are just shy from being competitive, and I think the thing that's holding them back, obviously is because they are two fair decks. Like the mechanics that they're working with and how they're playing, like they're not doing anything overtly broken that's abusing the game's mechanics in such a way that it's benefiting them more than anything else. And they're being held back because they're too fair. They're too good, they're too well designed, and they're not overtly broken. So they're not played as a result, or they don't have as much success. Like, granted, certain single cards, like you mentioned, like Hexablau, Shoto, you have Dinomon, like those individual cards. Technically, you have Medieval Gallant in that list too, but regardless, you have some individual cards that have so much strength that they can and are seeing competitive play, but not in the way Bandai would have thought that they would see play. Because people would like, oh yeah, I want to play Dinomon. Well, what's the best way to play him? Not in dinosaurs. Just play him in the Broken Galaxy engine because it's broken. So it's that type of stuff that really like takes, I guess I was going to say takes away, but like it really sours, I guess, the experience, because we're just getting into the part where decks aren't fair and honest, and when they're not fair and honest, they don't feel fun. Like, granted, yes, we do have a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh people in our community. A lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players left Yu-Gi-Oh because of how dishonest that game is to come to Digimon. And I guess like we're just all masochists in a way. Like, I don't know where I was going with this. To where it's
Or
just like,
incorporating some of the elements maybe that we've gotten from Yu-Gi-Oh into the Digimon.
right, like there's very obvious things that are overtly broken, dishonest, unfun, uninteractive, like just, and the sad part is, yeah, kind of like what we were alluding to next week, or not next week, last week, that Pandora's box has already been opened. So, like, unfortunately, power creep is going to have to continue unless they ban a lot of cards to try to reduce it. But even if they ban a lot of cards, like, I don't know if the Liberator decks are going to be what rises from the ashes to be the more fair and honest competitive decks. And I don't think the answer is yes, because it all just depends on what they end up hitting to try to rebalance the game. But, like, people, I guess, like the Yu-Gi-Oh side of the community, like the ex Yu-Gi-Oh side, has natively really thick skin and a high tolerance to broken stuff. Whereas somebody who is newer and is not having fun because they don't understand how the game is breaking as much, and their pet deck can't be competitively viable, like they're not going to have as much fun. I guess that's kind of where I was going with this. And I know that sounds like a very negative take, but like,
It's an honest take.
yeah, that's all I ever strive to be, and I know I've said that multiple times. It's an honest take, and I'm just like, I've been probably on a year journey at this point trying to come to terms with the state of the game, and uh, I've just been trying to come to terms with the state of the game and figure out like what am I supposed to do as a player. And Worlds is going to be a very telling sign, especially with the ban and restriction list, on like how my end feelings are going to be, cuz I don't enjoy playing broken stuff. Like, I'm sorry. I do not.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely the same because, like, lately in my locals, I've been playing Purple Hybrid. It's not that I want to play Purple Hybrid. It's not that I have a love of it. I just so happen to have it built, and if I was interested in playing anything else, I look and I go, like, I look at all the other decks, like, and I go, there's no way I could try to run a fun deck and have a good time if I don't play Purple Hybrid, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I've even this last set, like, cards came out, everyone's having a good time because new cards means new tools and new possibilities. And I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I don't have a reason to play anything other than Purple Hybrids and Mirage. Like, I'm trying to physically rationalize to myself a way to convince myself to play something other than those decks, but I have zero reason to because everything else just isn't. It's either A, I'm getting priced out of the game, which that's a whole subject matter that I was talking with the LGS owner, and he's just like, yeah, so when a game gets more expensive, that's actually the sign that the game is in a healthy spot. And I'm just like, fair. I could agree with that. Um, it doesn't stop it from feeling like crappy because, I guess I was just used to paying X amount per deck, and now that price increased. So I'm just like, I really don't know. So like,
Like
I haven't even built any new decks because I had zero reason to build any new decks.
yeah, I can see where the owner's coming from because if the prices are low, that means there's not a demand for it. But if prices are high, that means there is a high demand for it, and more demand means more players, theoretically speaking. So I understand where he's coming from in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think like Bandai's doing like set wise a really good job at trying to include as much value not only from a player's perspective but from a store's perspective to try to either sit on sealed product and have it age well depending on what the product is, or open it up, sell the singles, and like make the community happy. I mean, granted, this last set, it's like kind of just secret or bust, and your secret has to be Omnimon, or and then that's it. But that's where I'm an advocate for accessibility. So it's just like a set like 2.5 is something really appealing to me because I I could just get a lot for not a lot. Like I could do so much without paying so much. And it'll be interesting to see what BT21 ends up having in store for us because we got Applimon, we got Adventure, we got the starter decks coming out, we got more aquatic support. I don't think we know much of anything else. Oh, we got more Galacti support.
Yeah, Galactic. We have seen the level 6 Galacticmon, right?
Yeah, we did. He's so this is kind of where like the Mario was right kind of mentality kicks in, where it's just like, oh, yeah, Pandora's box is way far open because why else would they be designing degenerate OTKs that are highly uninteractable? So it's just like the idea behind the new Galactimon is using the option to burn all of the opponent's security mid attack and then swing to hit his or mid attack, burn everything but one, then hit the last one, then unsuspend using an inheritable, and then make the last attack for game. Like, it just boggles my mind why Bandai is printing more hyper degenerate OTK based combos when, for a good portion of the time, that's what they were trying to get rid of. So,
Uh,
like, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe they just like saw all the comments of people going when the manga first got out and like go and everyone was like saying, "How did more Greymon lose to a Galacticmon deck and everything?" And they're like, "Well, we got to show them how." And we see it and we go, "Oh, that makes sense."
I mean, technically, Galactimon was doing good enough with the new support that it got from what was it? BT18 or like Special Booster 2.0. Like it was pretty decent. Granted, it was a deck more designed to like counter tamer decks, which I think is fine because that then creates the dynamic of okay, you want to hose on purple hybrids, play Galactimon. Galactimon has a good purple hybrids matchup because it has ways to be able to proactively kill the tamers. And then, oh, cool, you're gonna mill my deck? Cool, thanks for putting my Vemmons in the trash, you goober. Now I'm going to like use the Vemmons in my trash to be able to make my Galacti even better because now I have more Vemmons to be able to pull from. Versus in the early to mid stages of the game, I barely have any Vemmons to work with. So like it was a good deck positioned very well. And like I don't think we really needed that, oh, that's how he won kind of like mentality because the deck already was decent.
Yeah, it. I mean, I'm a black player, so like kind of excited to play, but it's just kind of losing like what made it unique in the BT11 kind of aspect a little bit at the same time.
Well, so that type of a card, I'm blanking on its name. The new Galacti option. That type of a card is like that's what doesn't give me hope. Like you get, it's weird because you get like the Applimon stuff, which does give me hope because I think that's kind of cool and I like Applimon. I think the show was very underrated. One of the better seasons of Digimon, way better than Ghost Games. Um, but you get like the card that just says remove all of the opponent's security, and it's just like, what are they thinking? Because it's not a very hard card to set up. So it's like, okay, while I'm building up my Galacti, I somewhere use that option to have it sit on the field, delete one of the opponent's Digimon for a reasonably priced cost. And then afterward, I get up into Galacti, swing, use the option or use his ability to play another option to try to delete another Digimon. And then the second part lets me use the delay effect from the one that's already set up to just basically burn all of the opponent's security and win the game. And I'm just like, that's is that really what's gonna make the game feel fun? The option's name is Ragnarok Cannon. So yeah, like obviously I'm not saying they need to ban and restrict anything brand new just yet. But it's designs like that that don't give me a lot of hope for like good balanced gameplay even with post ban and restriction because what's stopping like okay, let's just say they do a pretty good ban and restriction list. Well, now we're going to enter BT21 with Ragnarok Cannon being the best thing because it just rips the opponent's security asunder.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is like try to counter it with like, oh, you're trashing my security. I want you to do that because like I know there's some yellow cards that don't mind, like Kisarimon or something, but it's like I don't know if that would even really be relevant.
Yeah, they have to make good yellow cards that want to be trashed from security more than what we have in order for it to be relevant. And I think like then you're still hitting problematic territory because you're trying to fight power creep with power creep. And then it's just a never-ending vicious cycle that they have to accelerate because of bad design decisions. And that's exactly what I don't want to see. And like because the adventure stuff already looks like a very strong like rookie rush esque style deck because based on the starter deck cards all of the level 5s have like alliance, so the idea is like yeah, let me just easily get out level 5s and then just alliance everything and then just have easy free attacks. So yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see how the game is gonna progress. But based on the current trajectory of the game, depending on that banner restriction list and the amount of hope that it could bring, I'm on a clock with Digimon. I'm gonna be saying that here first. I'm on a clock. Like I already can't play the game competitively anymore. Just because Bandai decided not to do any online events, so I don't have the money to travel. I barely have the money to even buy booster boxes. I officially don't. So, yeah, I already can't support the game in that capacity, and now I can't play competitively. So, what am I reasonably supposed to do as a player? Like, just play casually at locals? Um, and then play casually online? Especially if the game is proving to me that it's not necessarily getting better? Because I want to keep it. I want to keep this hobby. So I just don't know how I can reasonably do that.
I mean, because I know like I've been doing some other things. Like I've been trying to do like BioLife to get like some extra funds and everything. Like that's how I was able to get my 2.5 and everything was like just doing BioLife and making money through that and everything. So like I'm trying to kind of alleviate the burden of the cost, so to say, by just doing some other side hustle kind of things, I guess.
Yeah, that's what
That's
YouTube
what,
is for me. Like that's and I like doing YouTube content and I'm going to try not to stop because I find it fun to try to inform people. Like that's literally why I do it. It's not necessarily for the money. I could be way greedier than I am. Like I could set up a shop, I could lock a lot of content behind Patreon and YouTube memberships and like there's ways for me to be way greedier. But I don't because that defeats the purpose of what I want to try to do, which is just help people at the end of the day. And like, yes, you could sit there and say, "Oh, but you're being a doomer." No, I never said the game was going to die. I just said it's harder. It's getting harder for me to support the game as a whole. I don't think the game is going to die. I think the game is in a really good spot, and a lot of people are going to have to like Bandai's going to have to prove that post unification they can really get their shit together because I think like if they can't control and rein in their power creep, that's going to be the big killer of the game in the future. Not right now, in the future. I don't know when, I don't know how long, but I've seen it so many times before where they design themselves in a corner and they literally have nowhere to go. But and I hope they don't get there, but they're trying to speed run there and I don't know why. So but Digimon Con's coming up, so that'll be fun and exciting to see. Like we got a lot of news coming up, and that's gonna be a really good telling sign about the direction of the game. And I am cautiously optimistic. I hope for the absolute best. We got it, and it's gonna all happen really close and shortly, one after another. So there's just going to be a lot to be excited for the good or for the bad, depending on your take and how you spin. So, any final statements, Jay Stewart?
I mean, part of me is hoping that at Worlds, I'm hoping it's not going to be just Purple Hybrid that we end up seeing. I'm hoping to see some other fun decks. Like I would love to see Alphamon get represented, but I just personally cannot say at this current moment in time Alphamon is definitely going to be able to compete with all the other decks as of right now. It's got good tools. I just don't know if it's enough.
Yeah, we'll see the true test of the diversity everyone is so claiming we have at nationals. Because if the world's best players are all thinking Purple Hybrids is unanimously the best deck next to Royal Knights, and like let's just say 50% of the field is Royal Knights, 50% of the field is Purple Hybrids, I think that's a bigger telling sign that there is something very clearly wrong here. So there's going to be a lot of attention on Bandai in the next coming week between Digimon Con's news, between Worlds, between the ban and restriction list, and the continued spoilers of the next set, which we're not getting until late April. So, but yeah, I'm just happy that I placed my order for a lot of the BT20 or yeah, the BT20 cards. I'm still gonna try to make some of those decks. I'm just debating which ones I'm making. I'm actually leaning towards trying to build Chronicles personally. Like I think that deck looks kind of fun and neat, and I think like compared to a lot of the other DNA decks, it just looks to be one of the stronger ones.
Yeah, I plan on also making Chronicles. I'm trying to get my hands on all the max rarities. Like as of right now, I have one Alt Art Alphamon or Yukine's. I have two Kodo Demotos and Yuji Alt Arts. I'm trying to get my hands on a few others and like a couple pre-releases because I obviously love Alphamon as I said, and that is the one deck I will spend money to get Alt Arts for. But I'm also looking at Examon at the same time because I just kind of like the idea of what it could potentially even do.
Yeah, no. I think like there's a lot of good still in the game, and I'm excited to see how Bandai can make it better. That's the end message I want to leave off on is I just want the game to be better. I want more interaction, like actual interaction, and more counterplay to be had. Not counter spells, but counterplay. So more checks and balances. And I think Bandai has the capacity to deliver. It's just whether they. It's just the next bit of news that we're going to be getting over the rest of March is going to be very telling for the first initial onset of the first unified year. So I'm hopeful. I hope everyone else is hopeful. Are you hopeful?
Yeah, I'm like really hopeful for the game because like there is like the couple decks that we see, then we just go, ooh, that seems really like a kind of a step back. There's also been a lot of decks that they have introduced that look like a good step forward of how they want to try to make the game go. And I'm also just really hopeful they'll actually announce a lot more tournaments because as of right now, it's like looking at the March list, like there's not really a lot. So it's like, oh, please announce more tournaments, guys. Come on.
I would like more tournaments. We still have store tournaments that they haven't announced yet what they're gonna do. I think those are gonna be more for the summer. I think unfortunately the spring season's basically gonna be very dry. Which spring season usually is pretty dry post Worlds, but I don't. I think this is honestly the driest we've been. Like post Worlds, because usually like April, May, there's like a tournament every weekend or every other weekend, and the fact that we know post all the way up to the end of May, and we only have 4 North American tournaments and like 1 to 2 tournaments for everywhere else, I'm just like, that doesn't look good. So hopefully Bandai is figuring their shit out and getting it together and making the game as good as it can be, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be stunting the game's growth, not the game itself. Because people just want to play. That's all we want. We just want to play, and we want to feel rewarded for playing, and we want the game to be good. It's not very hard to do. They're almost there. So sorry if this episode was a little bit more doomery than I wanted it to be, or like negative or pessimistic. I'm still coming to terms with how I currently feel based on the ever changing state of the game, and like also the ever changing state of my own personal life. Because I do content for fun. I'm not like hardcore making big bucks enough to quit my job to do this full time. It is just a hobby to me. But I enjoy it and I don't want to stop. Even though my parents are asking me to stop every single weekend. But that's because my dad doesn't believe in my hobbies. He never did. So, any final words, Jay Stewart?
The only thing I can say is I hope everyone had fun opening up 2.5. I sure as heck did. So
Yeah. I think I might have enough for the starter decks, considering my birthday is towards the end of the month. Um, so hopefully I get some birthday funds to be able to at least afford the starter decks. Um, but yeah, this time I'm gonna have to skip on the boosters, unfortunately. But yeah, so I hope everyone so far has been having fun with 2.5. It's just a shame we don't. I mean, we have plenty of time with the format. We just won't have any actual tournament competitive results for it to report on outside of like the smaller events that Risu posts on Eggman's website. And I guess you could use Digimon Meta, but again, that's just local level data. I don't trust that at all. Um, and it's selective locals. It's not all locals. It would be cool if it was all locals, but I know most locals don't report to that, or most locals aren't big enough to want to report. So, but yeah, I think this is a good place to stop. I think that the game is going to have a very interesting 2025. We're about to enter the 2025 season. A lot of eyes is going to be on Worlds, Digimon Con for news and announcements. So exciting stuff all around. I'm curious to see where the overall direction of the game is going to go. Because I don't want to stop playing, but we'll see. So Hope everyone found this episode to be interesting. Again, I do apologize if this was a little bit more on the negative side. I'm trying my hardest not to be super negative. It's not for views or anything, I promise. It's not for clout or clickbait. It's just my honest opinion. So, with that, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode nonetheless, and we hope to see you in the next one. Later.